how the comments generate the marks, which means how you understand the report, and the levels of attainment we expect for instance, a pass or a distinction level. So we have a large repertoire, a wide range, which gives us an opportunity for exploring a big range of music, learning about program building, and playing to the candidate's strengths. It's a real opportunity to learn about that really important element of program building. And although that's not hugely reflected in the marking, it's still a very valuable tool for an aspiring performer. So if we're going to look at the content of the report, it helps to think about the marking criteria themselves first. So we're going to have a look at those. We'll look at FTCL and LTCL first. Worth thinking about the fact that diplomas are very different from grades in how we use these criteria. They're not separated out in the same way, they weave into one another. We look at the musical outcome as a whole, but there's a big difference here between what somebody might intend to do and whether they manage to do that, and in how the criteria work to support one another. So, for instance, if a piece isn't performed fluently, that is going to affect the musical outcome in the end. We'll look at these a little bit more closely. So all three boxes will feed into that musical outcome. So if the technique isn't in place, the rhythm is likely to be, for instance, for a pianist, less secure. Finger work might be unsettled, so the rhythm itself might not be quite precise. And this is where we mark this in the fluency and accuracy category. So we've got, for a distinction mark, completely consistent and accomplished fluency. No breaks, no problems, no stopping would give us a mark of between 30 and 32. And only very, very small insignificant slips. And you can see this goes down through the criteria. We have excellent, very good, good, and for below pass, inconsistent. So our expectation of a pass in the fluency and accuracy is good fluency and very few errors. There are some errors, but a good level of security overall. And this is the expectation to reach pass level. If we look at technical assurance and application, again, unlike grades, where we assess technique in isolation, here we're looking at the candidate's ability to utilise this technical facility in the service of the music. So not only do they have good technique, but they're learning how to use that to express what they want to express and to do that stylistically. So choices in articulation, in tone colour, in phrasing, they will all feed into the technical application, technical assurance and application category, which will then feed into the musical sense category. So we have here completely assured technical facility for a distinction. And this is probably one of the most important things to think about. Exceptional control, flexibility and variety of tone. So we're looking at really good instrumental control to get a distinction. And fully expressive stylistic use of articulation, phrasing and detail. So we're looking at being able to do those things, but also then being able to apply them to the piece that is being played so that we get a convincing interpretation. At the pass level, we've got reliable technical facility, good control, and mostly expressive and stylistic use of those techniques. So the fluency and accuracy and the technical assurance and what we do with that technical assurance all feed into the musical sense of communication. It's the musical outcome that we're then going to assess at diploma level. So there's assessment here of the interpretation and how convincing that is. But in order for it to be convincing, it's going to be dependent on the candidate's ability to utilise the fluency, the accuracy, and the technical assurance. Technique will affect everything from the ability to deliver an accurate performance to the ability to use the articulation, the timbre, the voicing, and the balance effectively to show the interpretation. So those are our criteria. They're quite in-depth by the time we reach musical sense of communication. We're looking at things that are completely consistent, high level of idiomatic engagement, highly effective communication of the repertoire, and so on. And at pass level, we expect this to be good, generally effective, and generally persuasive, mostly secure. So there's an expectation, even at pass, that everything is going to be in place. So let's have a look at the report. Now, we think when we're examining and when we're training examiners about the purpose of the report and what we use it for. So, all right, okay. As far as the examiner goes, they're using the report to show you what has happened on the day of the exam, to talk about the music, to talk about the performance. It's a lovely thing to write, to craft, to do during the performance of the candidate. From the teacher's perspective, they're looking at the report to gain feedback. And sometimes it's hard to see how the comments in the report are going to be used to further the development of the candidate or the student. And that's one of the things I want to help to show you today. So the purpose of it is to inform you about what happened. We look at it through the candidate and teacher lens to make it accessible for the teacher, for the candidate to learn and develop. And then the most important thing, the comments need to align with the marks. So we're going to look at all those three things and how we do those. So here's a diploma report for just one piece. And here's the comments. And in yellow there, I've highlighted all the areas where we're talking about fluency and accuracy. And you can see that they're dotted all over the comment. They're not just one sentence about fluency and accuracy. We can see here we have a comment that says the pulse lost a little stability. There was some rhythmic precision lost, which I was talking about earlier. It's not just getting the rhythm mostly right, it's being very precise. Untidy moments, accuracy, integration of ornamentation, which is a difficult one, because sometimes that might cause the pulse to fluctuate because we're trying to do something difficult in the middle of a phrase. And then we've got some moments of lesser security down the bottom there. So you can see those comments about fluency and accuracy become part of the narrative of the report. Here, we've highlighted all the comments that are about technical assurance and the application of technical assurance. Let's have a look at those. So we have here in green, there was much that was secure in balance and clarity of texture. So we're talking about how the control, this is a piano sonata, so we're talking about the control of balance and the control of the texture contributed to the overall musical outcome. We're talking about evenness of tone, finger work, and you can see there, we've got coordination faltered in places. That's a technical issue, but it goes on to say untidy moments, losing a little of the sparkle. That's how the technique feeds into the musical outcome. We've got timbre, tonal colouring here, control of balance, unevenness of tone, articulation, shaping, and good control of tone and finger work. There are all the comments that are in this piece of the report about the technical assurance and how it's used. And you can see they're also scattered through the comments. Here are the comments for musical sense and communication. Also scattered and woven through the whole comment. We've got that it was musical in shape, it lost some of the sparkle, there was a good sense of overall shape. Shape is so important, particularly in a work like a hyper sonata. Very lyrical. We want to create lyrical lines there. There's a lovely phrase there, not all opportunities for nuance were utilised. What this means is that perhaps phrase endings and places where we might just want to ease the tempo a little into a new idea weren't carefully shown to us as listeners. There we've got things were a little reticent, a little held back, and that there were some subtle moments and reflective moments. Now we've looked at all three areas of commentary here, and we've seen that they're all scattered through the report. If we put them all together, you can see how everything in this report is relevant to performance and to the criteria. There are very few gaps. Most of this is either fluency and accuracy, technical assurance, or musical sense. And they're all woven together like a lovely piece of embroidery that tells the story of how the candidate played. Now, there's another thing that we do as examiners when we write a report, because we want to make it as encouraging as possible. We want to say what's happened that is good, what's been done well. That's really important for learning and development. But sometimes then, as the reader, it's hard to tell where we went wrong, what we might need to develop further, what might be important to learn about. And to do this whilst remaining encouraging, we use what we call justifying words. Words that say, this happened, but it didn't quite happen as it might have done. It wasn't quite fluid, or it wasn't quite even. So I've put these words in pink. We have an initial sense of direction. That means we could tell where the music was going at the start of the movement, but maybe not all the way through, maybe not all the time. There was much that was secure. That doesn't mean it was all secure. It means some of it was, or quite a lot of it was. We have a good sense of the overall shape, that you'll remember from our criteria that we're looking for an excellent sense, or for it to be very, very consistent. Good is a word we use for pass level. Musical sense of shaping, it says we have some musical sense of shaping. So were this my student, I would be saying, you need to work more on your musical shape. We need to work on the integration of the ornamentation. We need to work on how to change the tone colours so that if we want a bold tone, we can really hear that difference. Those are the things I would be picking out there, that they are positive, but they're saying they're positive, but they're this positive, not this positive. Areas to develop. So here, and this is our final report slide, we have in pink the positives with the justification, and in blue, the negatives with the justification. So this was not so good, but it wasn't awful. It was just not quite where we wanted. It was not entirely even. The coordination faltered in places, not all the time, but some of the time. And you can see there that our negatives in blue are greater even than the justified positives. And when then looking at this report and pulling out of it what you might want to do with a student, what the student might want to develop further, and how the mark has been arrived at, this looks to me like, well, what does it look to you like? Does it look like a distinction? Perhaps not. But not a below pass, because there are lots of positive things in there, and negatives don't come down this far. So this is what we would call a safe pass. The candidate received a mark of 65, and that's really well represented by those colours there. We have negatives, but not very, very strong negatives. We have positives, but not very, very strong positives. And so we've arrived at the pass band in the middle there. What can we see? We can see comments about pulse, rhythmic precision, uneven finger work, the use of tone and tonal colouring, the control of the articulation, the nuance and the musical understanding, and the ability, not just the willingness, but the ability to show it. So think this is quite helpful. It shows us why that pass was arrived at, instead of it being a distinction, even though there are a lot of positive comments in there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is the difference between that pass band and the distinction band. And to do this, with my fingers crossed, because I very much hope they'll work, we have two videos. So we're going to watch, these are two violinists, we're only going to watch a short amount of each, playing Mozart's A major violin concerto, which is a very popular piece at FTCL. What I'd like you to do is think through these criteria again. Here are the ones for fluency and accuracy. Remember, for a distinction, it's got to be excellent, completely consistent, very few slips. For technical assurance, to reach a distinction, it's got to be completely assured, but more important than that almost, we need exceptional control. We need a lot of variety in colour, articulation, things that really bring the music to life. And there's the musical sense. We can tell it's highly effective communication. If it's not those things, then it's not a distinction level. So, Okay, very fluent, quite accurate. Do we think this is below pass? Yes, no? A pass or a distinction, do you think? You have hands up. Any comments on the chat for those who are in on Zoom? Perhaps you'd like to tell me whether you think, I'm sure we agree this is good enough to pass. Is it a pass or is it a distinction? Let's think about that technical assurance. Is there a broad range of tonal colour? Is there a large range of articulation? And is it being put to good stylistic use in service of the music? Do we have any comments?
There's only one comment that is distinction.
Distinction, okay.
Pass.
Pass? You don't think it's a pass?
It should be safe.
Kate thinks it's a pass. All right. We've got lots of passes here. Okay. Let's listen to the next one and let's see what this does for us and whether there's a big contrast. Okay. What do we think about that? Is that a pass or is it a distinction? That's a quiet. Eugene.
Far more accurate.
Far more accurate.
Yes. far more accurate.
technical assurance, tone colour, articulation,
Well,
dynamics.
there was a variation in the bowl. It was a variation in the way the bowl was articulated, and there was much better ensemble with the kids.
Okay, Kate.
I don't think it's perfect.
No.
I think some of it was well intentioned. And maybe didn't quite do what.
So for our criteria, there was a wide range of dynamics. Yeah, of which there weren't.
For the benefit of the people in the Zoom, you may have to repeat what Kate said.
Yes. She said it wasn't perfect.
It wasn't well intentioned. Although it was well intentioned.
Do we have
Yes, we have comment that said nice sounds, wrong angle of recording, his block.
this may be true. However,
But DGD.
doesn't change the way you played, which was with a broad range of dynamics, which we didn't hear from the first candidate, and much wider use of articulation, much more off the string, alternating with on the string, a much wider range of tone colours. So when I felt like there were 3 or 4 different characters in there, like, oh, here comes this one. Oh, look, there's the lively person. There's the person who wants to have a dance. Much different from the first one, which was very solid, but much the same all the way through. So, no, it wasn't perfect. There were some slips in intonation, small slips in coordination, but as far as using his technique to show us the music, he did much more of that. And this is a distinction level performance for us. There was no doubt that the first one is a pass, very solid, about maybe 70 marks. But this is into the 80s. And that's one of the ways we tell the difference. All those things, they sit within the criteria, and as we saw before, they sit within the report. Okay, so we're going to move on and have a little look at FTCL. We have approved or not approved. And let's look at the words in those criteria like we looked at them before. So for approved, we have excellent fluency and accuracy is very secure. For not approved, all we need are some lapses in fluency or small slips in accuracy that detract from the overall performance. It's a small difference. So when we take an FTCL exam, we expect it to be at a very high level. This is a level 7 qualification, and it doesn't take much to bring it down to a not approved level. We've got control, flexibility, and variety of tone are highly accomplished. Really very good. And it just says for the other one, they're not sufficiently accomplished. They're not wholly stylistic. There's very little difference, and there's the one or the other one. And if it doesn't reach all those things in the approved column, we can't approve it. Now, you might see an FTCL report that says this was mostly excellent playing, but it needs to all be excellent playing. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it does need to be of a much higher level than the 60% pass at ATCL and FTCL, and that's the difference. And one of the reasons we do this is a qualification that is respected worldwide. When someone takes this exam and is successful, we want everyone to know what that means. So we're very careful to uphold the integrity of that qualification. So that if it says FTCL after your name, everybody knows that this is a very good and strong performer. Okay, how do we do that? So we have a really big quality assurance program for diplomas, which I'm very involved with and invested in. We have a solid training program. Examiners are trained on an online course in lengthy sessions, but then they have tasks in between. And for those tasks, we often make them individual to the examiner so that we know that they are going to reach the level we need them to be to examine your diplomas, anybody's diplomas. We treat each examiner to make sure they rise to that level and to support their progress. Checks, as mentioned, in the reporting and the marking. And only when we're completely happy that that examiner is going to do a good job do we let them loose to examine diplomas in the real world. we run training and standardisation courses to allow them to refresh their skills, and so that we can get an overview of the whole panel. But much of the ongoing standardisation work we do is done through our moderation. So our moderation processes form part of our quality assurance programme, and we do more moderation than we are required to do for the qualification. And when we roll out the rock and pop diplomas, which Kate's going to talk about later, we will put the same amount of quality assurance on those as well. We work very closely with the post-results team, so that allows us to keep a close eye on examining and results. And when we have local panels in parts of the world, we work with them to make sure that they're examining as we expect them to. So this is the journey a diploma takes. It's examined in the exam room. It gets looked at, the report gets looked at by a clerical reviewer. You'll notice at the bottom of the report there's a little line that says clerical reviewer and a signature. And that's somebody who checks that the examiner has formatted the report so that it's as we expect it, that the titles are all right, that the spelling is correct, just to make sure you are getting the report you deserve for that level of diploma. And the clerical review will also select some of those to go for moderation. The moderator will listen to some or all of the diploma depending on the level. We listen to more as they progress and make sure that the comments and the marks match, and that the comments match the reporting, and that the outcome is correct. If we discover, say from a particular examiner, that we have one or two reports that maybe we're not as happy with, we will check all of theirs for a while to make sure that we're supporting them and they get just to where we want them so that they examine as we expect. So I work very closely with all the teams that do that to make sure we're doing what we need to do to make sure that everyone who enters for a diploma gets the correct outcome. However, if they don't and they want to go for a results review, then we will listen to them again, absolutely sure that we haven't made any sort of mistake the first time, that we can slip through everything. Now, everyone on our team that examines diplomas undergoes the same rigorous moderation review and is subject to those same processes, including me. So all my diplomas are clerically reviewed, they're moderated to make sure that I'm doing my job properly. And I'm pleased to say that at no point has anybody asked me to change my marks so far. Right, so to finish, we have a few exciting developments coming. The first one is the updated repertoire lists, which will be with you next year, early next year. So I asked a member of the music team who is responsible for this, what they did to update the lists, and he sent me 2 pages of material. So I won't tell you everything, but there are going to be at least 175 new works added to the list. We made a commitment to keep these fresh, to have contemporary works added to those lists. And the way we did this was, as the approvers looked at things that had come in as own choice pieces, they considered whether any of those were of the level that made them correct for ATCL, LTCL or FTCL, and added them to the repertoire lists. So there's a bigger selection than ever, and a lot of those, over 100 of them, are in the piano lists, which is our most popular instrument. There are other small changes to publisher details, clarification of titles, things that make it easier to use the repertoire lists. There's a change to the requirements for single line instruments, such as a violin or a flute, where before they could include one unaccompanied work. And we've altered that to a percentage of the diploma. So 40% of the diploma can now be unaccompanied if they would like to do that. We've changed the length of time that approval letters will be valid for. So they're now able to be used for 3 years instead of 2 years. And very excitingly, we have removed the prerequisite for FTCL. So we no longer require an LTCL to be in place. We would always advise that you check the levels for you or your students, anybody wishing to take an FTCL, to make sure that they are going to be as successful as they can be, but it no longer have to prove that you're at FTCL level before taking it. And then we're going to be having the digital FTCL for classical and jazz, which will also be arriving in January. Now, the benefits of this are that for us, it means we can offer this all across the world, even in places where we can't get examiners. But for candidates, it's a really nice opportunity to prepare and practice and perform in a very familiar environment so that they can do their absolute best. It makes it easier for them to schedule their exam, to film it, to send it in. They can enter for the exam when they're ready. So they could film first, decide they need more work, film again, and then enter for the exam. So it's entirely up to them when they take it. It will be available all year round, assessed by the same panel as we currently use for FTCL and other diplomas, and subject to exactly the same level of quality assurance so that you're sure to be getting the right result. Of course, we'll continue to do these diplomas, FTCL for classical and jazz as well. And then the last exciting thing on my list is the Rock and Pop Diploma, which will be arriving in January at all 3 levels. It's a very exciting, fresh and new development, which Kate will be talking about later. So just remains for me to ask if you have any questions. Thank you all very much. I'm sorry the tech was a little bit difficult, but we got there in the end. And it's brilliant to see you all. We had a number of people on Zoom, I think. So I hope that's been useful for you as well.